birthday season for me, so I'm making another card today. And for this one, I'm putting a little gift with it. To make my little gift, it's going to be a print of this little cardinal that I had taken a photo of in my yard. And it was stealing one of my little tomatoes, and I thought it was so cute with the little red tomato in its mouth. So I sketched it out on Procreate, and that way I was able to kind of get the shape of the bird right. And then I copied that onto my watercolor paper. And I'm just using a kneaded eraser to make my pencil marks a little bit lighter. But I wanted to show you before I made it so you couldn't really see it. To start, I added a wash of water over just the bird, the feathers part of the bird. And while this is a cardinal, it's a young cardinal, so it's not really bright red yet. So I wanted to get the red in there kind of in the first few layers, and that way I would bring the browns in the last few layers. And eventually he won't look as red because he's not red yet. He's getting there though. I knew this was a young cardinal because when the father cardinal came by, the little cardinal got all excited and he spread his wings and he started flying away. Now, another way to distinguish a young cardinal from an adult cardinal is its beak. Juvenile cardinals typically have dark black or grayish black beaks that gradually turn a bright red-orange color as they mature. And this change in the beak color is one of the key indicators used to distinguish a young cardinal from an adult cardinal. Another thing I was curious about was, because I know the female cardinals are kind of brown compared to the bright red male cardinals, and I didn't know how to determine if this was a male young cardinal or a female one. And it says that they are very difficult to distinguish because they kind of look the same. But if the bird is male, you may eventually see patches of red as it molts out of its juvenile plumage. And this bird did have very bright colored red patches kind of under his wings. So because I saw this bird in real life, I know that this one is most likely going to be a male cardinal, and it's going to have bright red feathers as it matures and gets its beak that will turn that bright orange red color. So I thought it was pretty neat to see the bird at this stage. I'd actually seen one of the cardinals as a little baby. It was last year. I think it was only however old a bird is that it just starts to fly. The cardinals, the mom and the dad cardinal, were both like flocking around it and trying to help it fly back to the nest, and it kind of got stuck in my garden on one of my trees, and it was really cute to see this little tiny, it was so small, it was hard to tell it was a cardinal. The only way I knew that it was a cardinal is because of its parents being there. So otherwise I don't even think I would have been able to tell what kind of bird it was. And my Google, when I did the photo of it, it didn't know what kind of bird it was either, because I guess baby cardinals are not photographed very often. I don't know, but I thought it was really cute. So I thought seeing it at this juvenile stage was pretty neat because I hadn't really seen the whole staging. So here I am trying to capture some of those red parts where I had seen in the feathers, and then I have his bright red tomato in his mouth. Now, when I captured the picture of this, it was on my tomato cage, but I wanted to make it look like he was up in the trees on a branch. So I just brought in a bunch of greens and some lighter and darker tones. I even brought in some purple for some shadows. And I just wanted to make it look like he was just up in the trees after stealing a tomato. And then up in the top area, I had lighter colors, and then I just kind of started making little leaf shapes in the opening, so it just kind of looked like it was a blurred background, almost like a bokeh effect, but as you would take a photograph and kind of see the background blur out a little bit, that's kind of the goal I was going for here. And then once I finished the painting, I just removed all the tape, added the details for the eyes and the beak and the little bit of detail in the tomato. And then that finishes out my little picture that I'm going to include in my card. So this is going to be for my sister, and she has a beautiful garden as well. So I thought this would be something she would appreciate, seeing a little bird stealing some vegetables. And then for the card part, I have some pinks that I picked out for my Distress Oxide, Kitsch Flamingo, Picked Raspberry, and Abandoned Coral. And I put this stencil over my watercolor paper. And I thought instead of using a blending tool, maybe what I'll do is just watercolor in the openings of my stencil. I wasn't sure if this was going to work, and I also didn't know how much of it was going to bleed underneath the stencil, but surprisingly it worked really well. Now I wanted some of that bleed, so what I did was I took my mini mister with some water in it and I just sprayed over the design. I wanted a softer look of those petals and the clocks, so I did that, and then I wanted a little bit of a shiny part to this, so I brought in some Perfect Pearls. This is just a light pink Perfect Pearl, and I mixed it in with some of the water that was on my little glass mat here, and then I dabbed it into the Perfect Pearl water and dried it down. It brings just a little bit of a shine to the surface, nothing too much, not like you would see in my gel prints, but I did like the effect of it because it was just nice and subtle. Now here I'm going to mix this up a little bit. I took kind of like the opposite, so I took the stencil, lined it up over my design, and then flipped it. I put my Uncharted Mariner and my black soot on there, spritzed it with some more of that mini mister water, kind of moved it around so that the black and the blue would mix together in the middle. Then I dried my surface and flipped my stencil over and just kind of looked through the stencil to line up the design in the exact area that it was when I had created the pink part of this design. And then once I felt like it was pretty well lined up, I just took my towel, my microfiber cloth, and just put that over the top so that it would catch any extra water that might squish underneath the stencil, because I was trying to maintain the pink area. And then once I removed that, it did a really great job of giving me the negative to the pink part. Now I know that I probably could have just done a pink background, which was what I was originally planning to do. I was going to do just a pink background and then do this blue and black part to the top of that. But the one thing I liked about doing it this way is there was some actual white areas, and you can see that in the blue there's some white in that area, and I really liked that. So I think it just made it look a little more handmade that way, like almost like it was painted out that way. I'm making another layer. This is what's going to bring in my birthday celebration shine. So I have this Starburst stamp set, and it's just a background stamp, and it's going to go over a piece of watercolor paper, again cut down. And the watercolor paper I'm using today is Artist Loft 90 pound that I got from Michaels. It's just their typical brand, but in the 90 pound, and I like that one because it doesn't have a lot of weight to it, so it's nice in a card. And then I put my Versamark ink over this, and I couldn't really tell. When it's a big background stamp like this, it's really hard to tell with a clear ink if you got the entire background or the areas that you really want to get. Like for me, I was focusing on getting the edges because that's the part that's going to show. So I thought I would try to find where the little starbursts were with my Perfect Pearls here. So I used the darker color, and then I was able to see exactly where my design stamped out, and I saw where I needed to add a little more ink. So I just added a few more layers of my Versamark ink over the top of that, and then once I felt like I had all the little starbursts with ink on them, I took my kaleidoscope. This is really pretty. It's a clear embossing powder, but it has like a colorful sparkle to it. But the interesting thing about this one is when you heat it, if you heat it a lot, it becomes kind of like an orangey sparkle. And if you heat it just a little, it's more of like a purple sparkle. And you can get kind of the variation of the rainbow, which I think is why it's called kaleidoscope, based off how much heat you apply to the surface of your embossing. So as I go along, I always try to stop at the first layer with the purple, and then I can always come in and make it a little bit darker in some areas, or more green or more orange based off the amount of heat that I apply. Then I wanted to add my sentiment, which is going to be the focal point over my background here. And I'm just using this happy birthday to you, which kind of looks like a nice sketched out birthday stamp. And I'm going to use my VersaFine Onyx Black ink over this one. And I am glad I'm using my stamping platform, because for whatever reason, the R in this stamp just was not working the first few times. It was almost just non-existent. And I kept pushing in that area. It took me 4 layers of reapplying ink and pushing in that area specifically until I was happy with the result. But then I was able to emboss this with my black embossing powder, because I really wanted this to shine as it is the top of my card. And the black embossing powder is a really fine embossing powder, so I did use a little bit of my cornstarch over this background before I added this powder and before I added my stamping. So it's nice and shiny. Now for this part, I didn't want it to be white. I was really looking to have another layer behind that focal birthday piece that I had done. So I added my Uncharted Mariner to the sides of this watercoloring, which is why I made this in watercolor paper, because I knew I wanted to do this part. And to make it blend a little bit with the original piece that I had put on, that I'm going to be putting over the top, I did put some of my Distress Black Soot on there as well. Then I just sprayed it all with my mini mister and let the colors run together. And then I used a paintbrush just to blend them out a little bit and make sure that they were kind of getting moved around a little bit. And then I dried it, and it lightened it up quite a bit by adding that water, so I did want to add one more layer to this just to darken it up a little bit. I really do like how that black soot kind of becomes like a soft gray, like a warm gray almost, when it's mixed with this blue. It doesn't look like black at all to me, so I was really happy with how that was turning out, because I really didn't want to lose the effect of the Uncharted Mariner. That's the color I really liked. So here are my 2 pieces together. Now the top piece was not standing out as much as I had hoped it would, so I did take a black alcohol Prisma marker, and I have this chisel side of it, and I'm easily able to just quickly draw a line down all 4 sides. And this doesn't take any precision at all because it's the fat chisel tip. So all I did was I just kind of dragged the fat part of my marker around the edge of my little piece here, and that way I was able to get just a little bit of a frame to separate it from that background piece. And I think that looks really nice like that. Then I was trying to figure out which color card background I wanted. I was originally going to go with this coral, but the colors in the foreground were a lot more pink than they were coral. There was a little bit of coral, but it felt to me like the pink just looked better. It had a lighter and darker tone pink in this background, so I did end up going with this one here. And then I just used some double-sided tape to adhere the watercolor background piece, the one with the starbursts. I wanted that layer to be flat. And then for the happy birthday layer, I used some foam tape on the back of that one. And there is my completed card. Now, I had forgotten I'd stamped my logo on the back of this one the opposite way. So I'll probably put a sticker over that. But here is the little cardinal. I named it Young Cardinal Eating a Tomato. And I dated and signed the front of it. And so that's going to go in my card for my sister as her little gift. Okay, so here's where I need your help. I didn't put any bling on the top of this card. So, because I have the layers that have some sparkle in them. So what I wanted to know from you as my viewers, if you have an opinion and you want to share it with me, would you prefer that I leave it as is, or should I add something to this as icing? So my thought is one of the three. Either some stickles, or some gemstones, or some sequins. If you have a thought of something else that you think would look good on the front of this card, let me know. I'll take anybody's suggestions, and I'll have AI pick from the choices, and that's what I'll add to this card if I get any responses. And then I'll put a picture of it on my YouTube community page, and I'll tag the person whose design selection, and if it's multiples of you, I'll tag anybody who suggested what it is that I put on the front of the card. So let me know your thoughts, and I can't wait to hear from you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy crafting, y'all.